Hi everybody, welcome back to Plastic Models by a Regular Dude and part 8 of the Tamiya 1/35th scale German Sdkfz 250/3 Greif buddy build with Jim at Shutter Race. Alright, in this episode, well actually in the last episode, I did 15, 16, and 17, which was the fenders, fender details, and some of the smaller parts. But before I did that, I had to install the running gear with much wailing and gnashing of teeth. Didn't work out very well. As you can see, I've got a gap right here, and I need to somehow fix that. So I'll probably take a piece of this extra link and try and glue it in place there, but I'll deal with that in a little while. But anyway, got the fenders on, all the details on the fenders, this machine gun mount here, the back door. So with all of that out of the way, it's time to move on to 18 and 19, which is the fuel can assembly, the fuel, extra fuel can assembly, the frame antenna, headlights, and the rear view mirror, and fender markers, or whatever they're called. I can't remember what they're called, but I do that. And I also need to do the figures, and I'll be assembling those and getting those ready for paint. Alright, so the first thing I need to do is I need to get the C-sprue and cut off all these parts. So I need 7, 9, 8, 3 C11s, some C5s, and a C1. So let us begin. We'll see how all this goes together. So the last time working on this thing, I had a real problem with the tracks. So if you have watched the video and you saw how I assembled that, how I handled that whole situation, I definitely would try and dissuade you from doing it like I did it, unless you just really like a gnarly challenge, because it did not go as planned at all. Now in the end it worked out somewhat, and it will be okay, especially once I get paint and everything on it, but still I'm just not really too stoked with the way I handled that. Now what I should have done is I should have followed the instructions and assembled everything as it showed the instructions, which was to put the wheels on first and then assemble the tracks around the wheels. If I would have done that, I probably could have saved myself a lot of personal anguish. But the thing is, the tracks don't lend themselves well. Like if you have ever built or used Dragon Magic tracks, for instance, they're pretty finely detailed and quite robust, in that you can lay a whole strip of them out, glue them, and then shape them around the wheels, or whatever you might have on a given kit, bogey assemblies, whatever. Problem is, these tracks are so small, and the contact points where you cement them together are so small, there's just not enough contact between the parts for it to really stick well. And I mean, they stick okay, but the minute you try to start manipulating them around the running gear, that's where you start losing it parts start popping apart, and you know, I can be pretty I can finesse things pretty well when need be, and I was just not having any luck with it. So if you watched the last video, you know, it was kind of a bummer. I got kind of frustrated a few times, but in the end it worked out as well as it could. And again, once I get paint, weathering, that kind of stuff on there, it'll be okay. So I'm going to work on this stuff here and get it all cleaned up, and then we can move on to assembling it all. So first thing I need to do before I start gluing this stuff together is I need to engrave some seam lines along this edge here, which is the edge that faces out on this jerry can rack, because German jerry cans have a seam all the way around, not a protruding seam. So what I'm doing here is I'm taking some Tamiya tape like this, and I'm going to layer it up, 4 layers. I'm sure I could find something else to use, but I have Tamiya tape here, so that's what I'm using. Layer it up, 4 layers like this. Then I'm going to take my straight edge, my stainless steel straight edge, and I'm going to cut it so it's all flush on the edge like that. And using that straight edge, I'm going to put it right along the mold seam line. We'll remove that later, but I'm going to put it just to the side of it so I'll have some room. Then using my panel line engraver sent to me by HG Barnes, thanks again, my friend, it's really come in handy. I'm just going to go right along that tape like that, not applying too much pressure. I just want to get it started really good, and go down each segment here like this. And once I get it started and get it going good, I can peel the tape off. I mean, I guess any kind of panel line engraver would work, but this is the one I have and I really like it. So we got that all done like that. Okay, so it's all started. You want to try and center it as much as you can. It's pretty kind of centered. Just get it engraved really well like that. And then once you get that, then I'm going to use my sanding stick and basically remove the seam line from the molding process. Then use the scriber again. Clear that out. Then I used this saw right here, this little teeny tiny saw, and where the cans come together, where it's like, you know, it's not supposed to be molded, I wanted to put a nice clean groove there so it will look like one thing stacked on top of another, and not just one big molded blob. This kind of needs to be done as well, but honestly, because it's in there in kind of a weird place, it's not going to be as easy. But I'll give it a shot because the handles are going to be over top of it, so it's not going to be as noticeable. Okay, so then I'm just going to take my Tamiya extra thin and just run it down that seam line just to kind of clean up any fuzziness. Same there, and voila, you got your mostly straight seam lines. Alright, so I'm going to do that the rest of them. Alright, so that's all done. So now I need to glue this stuff together like this. I'm going to use this cement this time. These cans all glued together thusly. Like that. All right, and then these small pieces here, fit here like this. Possibly. Let's get this out of the way. Now one thing I'm going to have to do is I'm going to have to let this dry really well. I'm going to have to sand these smooth because, you know, you can tell this is supposed to be a solid strap going across there. And as you can see, it's like it doesn't fit as well as the strap that is molded on. So I'll have to let that dry really well and then sand it down. But in the meantime, I can, let's see. And if you want to see, let's see. I did a Tamiya Panzer IV some years back, and it had a similar situation with extra fuel cans and how they were strapped on the side, and I demonstrate how to scratch build a rack and use some good jerry cans from like you know, say like a jerry can set or something like that. Generally those are a lot better in quality, especially the newer ones, so you can make them look you know, a bit better than this molded stuff. But you know, I am trying to stick with out of the box here, so that's why I'm doing this. And in actuality, it's tougher to make these look decent than it is just to scratch build a rack and use individual jerry cans, because the cleanup is a lot easier. You're able to control the shape of the framework and everything a lot better, and it just, you know, it just looks better. But again, once we get dust and dirt, paint, all that kind of stuff on this, it's going to help a lot. As old Shepherd Payne used to say, if you don't know who that is, you need to look him up. He's responsible for some of the stuff we do nowadays, and even though some of his work can be kind of dated, he was responsible for a lot of, you know, awesome stuff, especially with monogram models. But he mentions that you know, you can have an okay built tank with a really good paint job, and you're a lot better off than having a really good or really well built model and a poor paint job. Paint can really help out in the overall appearance of a kit. So that's just some, you know, extra little gibberish there. Just some extra stuff. So this rack goes on here like this. So we need to glue that on, but I'm going to wait to glue that on until I sand all the rest of that stuff. So I'm going to kind of slide that aside and let it start drying. I'm going to start cutting out this frame antenna. Well, actually what I'll do first is I'll cut out part C23, and it says here in the notes, fix C23 only when you choose painting of Greif. So I do need that. And if you look at reference photos and you can see the front of the vehicle, you'll see that this little weird thing is there, whatever it is. I'm not sure what it's supposed to be, so maybe somebody could hip me to that information. I'd really be stoked. So I'm going to cut that off, cut the pole parts of the framework antenna off, like that, and then get this frame antenna cut off of here. Now see, this is another one of those cases, this is where it's nice. Tamiya plastic is not too brittle and it's not too soft. It's just right. Okay, so there's that. You know, I'm gonna go ahead and cut these off for later cleanup. That way I can just toss this sprue right in the old wastebasket, trash can, refuse container, etc. All right, good deal. So let me get this these parts here cleaned up. Got that cleaned up, so we'll put it in place and hope it doesn't, oh my lord, hope it doesn't interfere too much with the camo scheme. If it does, we'll just touch it up with the brush. So there's that, so we can set that aside. And I did get that little piece of track inserted in there, so that won't be quite so bothersome. So we'll get this cleaned up here. All right, so I've got all of the parts cleaned up for the antenna. So I'm going to do that first. Actually, no, I'm not. I'm going to do the fuel can things first. The one thing I did do is I put a little sprue goo on that joint right there so there wouldn't be a seam. So I just need to touch it up a little bit. And it looks pretty good. So there's that. The handles are glued in place. This here, now it's showing this is supposed to be glued on here like this. So I'm going to have to do one side at a time because it's kind of flexible and I want to make sure it lines up right. So got that. So this needs to go here like this. There. And there. Kind of hold that there for a second and I'll let that dry for a second before I try and mess with the other side. See, as you can see, it's kind of bowed out just a little bit, so by doing it each side, it'll line up better. That's probably ready to go now. So let's put some cement. Oh man. There. And there. Like that. Okay, so let's let that sit up for a sec. Alright, so now I can install it here. So I need to make sure that is lined up. I had to zoom it back out, that way you can see what I'm actually doing. Make sure it's lined up. Like that. I'll put some cement. Turn it around, hopefully not knock it loose. On there like that. So I'm going to let this set up for a minute. Alright, so here is the tricky part. So I've got to glue these in place on these brackets, and then I have to glue this in place. So I'm trying to decide here if it would be better to glue these on first or glue them on there first. I'm thinking I might do this first. It might be a little bit easier. Because I should be able to move those around. So I'm afraid if I try and just glue them on here, things are gonna, yeah, I think I'm gonna glue it on here first. I'll use the back ones and see if I can get the distance apart first. So this is what I'm gonna do. And then I'll probably have to use some cement to soften it up so I can move it around into the final position. You know what, actually what I'll do is I'll use my regular extra thin because it sets up a little bit slower. Okay, so we got, whoops. That might give me a little bit more time to work. So let's do that one. And that one. Okay, let's see what the spacing's like here. Whoa, that wasn't good. Yowza. Okay, so that needs to be splayed out a little bit more. So it looks like this one here needs to go out. This one here. Trying to keep my noggin out of the way of the camera. That's pretty close. Okay. Okay, that's workable. All right, so that gives me an idea. And again, I can use the cement to soften the joint to make any adjustments that might need to be made. Okay, those are all in place, so I'm gonna let this set up a little bit because these are really fragile. That's Italian for fragile. I'll still have a little bit of time to work. It looks like the spacing is going to be good, so I'm going to let that set up just a little bit. All right, so here we go. So now I'm going to switch back to my extra thin quick setting. I've got this set in place. The spacing looks pretty good, but I'm going to do one at a time so I can make sure they stick good without being dumb. So there's that one. Let's spin it around. Let's do that one next. Let's do that one next, actually. Looks pretty square. Now it's just like changing a tire on a car. Gotta go in a certain pattern. Okay, so let's get some of this on here, and then do that. Oh yeah. Wow, that is pretty groovy. Let's check these out and make sure they're all stuck. Yes, they are. They're all stuck down really good. And then the last one on my homemade mount, which I'm quite pleased to see, is of an equivalent size as the other ones. Never did find that part on the floor either. Which is no surprise with the color carpet I have. Alrighty then. Alright, so that is that. So let's see. So let's let that dry up a minute and we'll cut off these other parts, which are the headlights, which are 53 and 54. And let's see, 53 goes on the driver's side, which by the way is on the left, which unfortunately for some of my subscribers and friends on YouTube and so forth, is the correct side for driving. The left side. Sorry folks, I'm a left side driver. Alright, so we'll get those cleaned up. Let's see. Well, actually, you know what? Oh, the only part left on here is this machine gun for the back. So I'm going to go ahead and chop that off of here. And that will conclude all the sprues, excluding the figures, for this kit. So let's get this cleaned up here. Now, one thing to keep in mind on these headlights is it has this ridge all the way around, and it is a mold seam line, but it's also an actual detail of the headlight. It's like the rim that goes around the front edge, you know, that you'd pop off to change the bulb or whatever. So you don't want to sand all that off. You could maybe knock it down a little bit, which is what I'm going to do because it's kind of maybe a little too, well, actually I don't think I am. It's not too pronounced, so I think it'll be okay. I will get the ones on the post there, and then I'll definitely get the one here so it'll sit flat where it goes on the actual vehicle body. And then I gotta clean these markers here. Can't remember what they're actually called, but even on modern big rigs, you know, big transportation trucks and stuff like that, you still see these things sometimes on the fenders. They're markers that help gauge you know, distances and stuff from where you're parking or whatever. Alright, so that's all cleaned up, so now I can glue them on where they go. Alright, so let's go ahead and glue these headlights in. this one going there. So I'll put a little dab of cement in there, like thusly. And put that there like that. And make sure it's kind of level and square. Not pointing at the sky. Sure don't want to signal any aircraft now, do we? There we go. That looks good. So put a little bit more cement in there just to really lock it down. Okay, so we got that. So now we'll do this one. Same thing. Put a little dot in there like that. Put that in there like that. Okay, this one needs to come up. That one needs to go down. I'm sure they got banged around a little bit, but the post on these seems to be pretty substantial, so I wouldn't think it would get too messed up. All right, that'll work. Except that one's facing a little bit down. There we go. That's good. All right, next we'll put the markers in place. This one with the rear view mirror. Whoops! With the rear view mirror on it. Which I'm sure you can see a lot from that little tiny vision slit there, being the driver and all. I don't know why it's always struck me funny that they would put traffic safety devices on military vehicles. You wouldn't think they'd be too overly concerned with just, you know, hammering through a town or something. All right, so I got those parts on the front. So steps 18 and 19, with the exception of the machine gun and the tarp stuff, is done. So the figures I'll handle in a different video. But I wanted to get this part complete, and then this, the only thing I have left to do now is to prime and paint this, and we can start on weathering. So that is the end of part number 8 of the Tamiya Sdkfz 250/3 Greif buddy build with Jim at Shudder Ace. So be sure and click the link below and check out Jim's channel, and also if you want to see how I handled building this type of thing but in a more detailed and kind of scratch buildy way on a Tamiya Panzer IV I did, there'll be a link below to one of my earlier videos, so you can check that out. So that's it. Thanks for joining me here on Plastic Models by a Regular Dude. If you have any hints, tips, questions, criticisms, anything like that, just put them in the comment section down below, and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. So until next time, for part 9, I will see you all later.